The first laugh cut through the lobby like a blade. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to turn heads. The country girl froze in her tracks, one hand tightening around the worn leather strap of her thrift store handbag as a group of sharply dressed executives stared at her boots, her faded denim jacket, and the hem of her dress that had clearly seen better days. She had stepped into the tallest glass building in the city, believing this was just another meeting. She had no idea she was about to be humiliated, or that, within a few hours, every single person in that room would be standing when she walked back in. Before we go any further, if you love stories where the underestimated rise, the powerful fall, and justice hits harder than revenge, go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now. You don't want to miss what happens next. Her name was Emma Carter, and she hadn't been back to this city in over 12 years. The automatic doors slid shut behind her, sealing off the noise of traffic and trapping her inside a world that smelled like polished marble and expensive cologne. For a moment, she wondered if she had the wrong building. Everyone else looked like they belonged in magazines. Tailored suits, heels that clicked with confidence, phones that cost more than her first car. Emma glanced down at herself, at the scuffed boots she'd cleaned as best she could that morning, at the simple dress she'd ironed on the kitchen table of her farmhouse before dawn. She told herself she didn't come this far to turn around now. The receptionist barely looked up. Her eyes flicked over Emma's clothes, then her expression tightened, polite but cold. "Can I help you?" "Yes, ma'am," Emma said softly. Her voice still carried the rhythm of open fields and long dirt roads. "I'm here for the board meeting. Carter Industries." That was when the laugh came. One of the men near the elevator smirked openly. Another leaned toward his colleague and whispered something that made them both grin. The receptionist's eyebrows lifted just a fraction. "The board meeting is on the top floor," she said slowly, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Are you catering?" Emma felt heat rush to her face. "No," she said. "I was invited." The receptionist sighed, tapping her keyboard. "Name? Emma Carter." There it was. The pause, the subtle shift. The receptionist's fingers stopped moving, her eyes darting back to the screen, then up at Emma again. Before she could say anything, a woman in a sleek black blazer stepped forward. "I'm sorry," the woman said with a tight smile, "but this meeting is for senior leadership only. This isn't appropriate attire." Emma swallowed. "I understand, but I was told to come as I am. That did it." The laughter grew bolder now, echoing across the lobby. Someone muttered, "Must be a joke." Another voice said, "Is this some kind of social experiment?" Emma wanted to disappear. For a split second, she was 16 again, standing in a school hallway while girls in designer clothes whispered about her thrift store jeans. She remembered the way humiliation could shrink a person, make them feel smaller than they really were. But she also remembered something else. Her father's voice, steady and calm, telling her never to bow her head just because someone else stood on higher ground. "I'll wait," Emma said quietly. "They're expecting me." Security was called. A tall guard approached, his gaze professional but skeptical. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Emma nodded. "I will," she said. "But first, could you let them know Emma Carter arrived?" The guard hesitated, then spoke into his radio. Seconds passed. The room buzzed with smug anticipation, as if everyone was enjoying the spectacle of watching someone be put in her place. Emma stood still, hands clasped, breathing through the ache in her chest. Then the elevator doors opened. A man in his late 50s stepped out, his presence commanding instant silence. His suit was impeccable, his posture rigid with authority. This was Richard Hale, the interim chairman of Carter Industries. His eyes swept the lobby, then locked onto Emma. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then his face drained of color. "Emma?" he said, disbelief cracking his polished tone. "Yes, sir," she replied. The shift was immediate. Confusion rippled through the executives. The receptionist straightened, suddenly pale. Richard took a step forward, his voice low but urgent. "Why are you standing down here?" Emma looked around at the frozen faces, at the people who had laughed. "I was told I didn't belong upstairs." The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. Richard turned slowly, his gaze landing on the group by the elevators. "Is that so?" No one answered. He exhaled, then faced Emma again, his voice firm. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, raising his voice just enough, "this is Emma Carter. Effective today, she is the new CEO of Carter Industries." Shock detonated across the room. The woman in the black blazer staggered back slightly. The men who had laughed stared at the floor. The receptionist's mouth opened, then closed again. Emma felt her heart pound, but she lifted her chin. This moment wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. 12 years earlier, Emma had walked away from this company with nothing but a duffel bag and a promise to herself. Carter Industries had been founded by her grandfather, built with grit, sacrifice, and a belief in people over profits. Her father had taken over after him, but when he died suddenly, the board had pushed Emma aside. She was too young, too rural, too emotional. They handed control to executives who wore the right suits and spoke the right language. Emma left. She returned to the land she grew up on, a quiet farm her father had loved. Everyone assumed she disappeared. What they didn't know was that Emma had been watching, learning, building. She invested quietly, studied business at night after working the fields. All day. Bought struggling companies no one believed in, and turned them around with patience and principle. While the board chased short-term profits, Emma focused on long-term value. By the time Carter Industries began to falter under bad leadership, she had become its largest private shareholder, and now she was back. The boardroom was silent as Emma took her seat at the head of the table. The same people who had dismissed her now avoided her gaze. Richard cleared his throat. "Emma will be addressing some immediate changes." Emma stood, placing her hands on the table. Her voice was calm, steady. "I want to thank you all for your honesty today," she said. "It showed me exactly what kind of culture this company has become." She looked directly at the man who had laughed first. Carter Industries was never meant to judge worth by appearance. We were built by people who worked with their hands and their hearts. She turned to the woman in the blazer. "Effective immediately. Our hiring and leadership evaluations will change. Respect will no longer be optional." Some faces burned with shame, others hardened with resentment. Emma continued, "This isn't about punishment, it's about restoration. But let me be clear, anyone who believes humility is weakness is free to leave." 2 executives resigned that day. News of Emma's appointment spread fast. Headlines mocked her clothes at first, then shifted as her decisions began to speak louder than any suit. She reinstated worker benefits that had been cut. She reopened factories in rural towns. Profits rose not because people were squeezed, but because they were valued. Weeks later, Emma returned to the lobby dressed exactly the same. The receptionist greeted her with a respectful smile. The security guard nodded. No one laughed. Emma paused, looking around, remembering the sting of that first day. She felt something close to peace. She hadn't changed to earn respect. She had changed the rules. As she stepped into the elevator, she smiled softly, thinking of her father, of the fields that taught her patience, of the truth she carried with her everywhere she went. Dignity isn't worn, it's lived. If this story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated or judged by how you look, tell us. From which part of the country are you watching this video? Your voice matters here.